Hey everyone! Welcome to Update X24H, your go-to channel for the latest news, hottest dramas, breaking stories, and all the buzz from the world of entertainment. We're here to keep you updated, entertained, and always in the loop. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing family, because here at Update X24H, we bring you the news that matters, the drama you love, and the stories you can't miss. Thanks for being part of our community. Let's stay connected, stay updated, and keep the good vibes rolling. In a world where silence can be more deafening than words, a storm has begun to rise in China's glittering entertainment industry. It started quietly, a few cryptic posts, a candle emoji, a white feather shared by millions. And then the whispers became impossible to ignore. For years, fans mourned Menglong, the gentle actor whose mysterious death was labeled an accident. But now, a new generation of China's brightest stars refuses to let his story fade into darkness. This isn't just a tale about one man's tragedy. It's about courage, about what happens when fame, fear, and truth collide. And the world is finally watching. When the spotlight fades and the applause dies away, silence often becomes the most dangerous sound. After Menglong's sudden death, the entertainment industry seemed paralyzed by fear. Official statements declared it a tragic accident, a moment of misfortune that should be mourned and forgotten. Yet, beneath the glittering surface of carefully crafted headlines, something felt profoundly wrong. The inconsistencies were too many, the gaps in the story too wide. Security footage disappeared overnight, hospital records were quietly amended, and witnesses who might have spoken up simply stopped answering calls. It was as if the truth itself had been placed under lock and key. Among those who had once shared the stage with him, grief turned into a kind of quiet rage. In that silence, 8 of China's most recognized stars found one another, not as celebrities, but as friends bound by loyalty and disbelief. They met in secret, away from the lenses and microphones that had once defined their lives. Phones were left at the door, voices lowered to whispers. Each person knew that speaking too loudly could mean the end of everything they had worked for. Yet what frightened them more was the thought of doing nothing. One of them finally broke the heavy air. If we stay quiet, we become part of it. The words fell like a verdict, sharp and undeniable. That night, their grief shifted into resolve. What began as sorrow became purpose. These artists, accustomed to scripts and cameras, stepped into a story without a director, without guarantees, without safety. They understood that the silence protecting power was louder than any lie, and that their only defense was to speak. Not recklessly, but truthfully. It was not rebellion they sought, but justice for a man whose kindness had been buried beneath convenience. The choice before them was simple yet terrifying. Remain safe and complicit, or risk everything to restore a voice that had been unjustly taken. In that moment, they chose courage over comfort. And though the world would never see what truly passed between them that night, something irreversible began. The silence was broken, not by noise but by conviction, by the steady heartbeat of those who refused to let fear have the final word. The search for truth began quietly, like a ripple spreading across still water. What had started as grief and disbelief soon evolved into something larger, a shared determination to uncover what really happened to Menglong. For months, the 8 stars moved carefully through a landscape built on silence, where every word could be twisted and every action watched. They learned to speak in codes, to trust only what could be proven, and to hide their intentions behind the masks of their daily work. Fame had once made them visible. Now it became a shield they had to use wisely, or it would destroy them. Through encrypted channels and whispered meetings, fragments of the truth began to surface. A journalist in Hong Kong, known for his integrity, risked everything to leak files that revealed impossible timelines in used medical records. A former hospital technician confirmed that parts of the autopsy had been digitally altered. And then came the breakthrough. A recovered phone belonging to you, containing a hidden folder marked Project M. Within it were short clips, encrypted documents, and one haunting message. Yu's own voice trembled through the static. If you see this, something went wrong. Don't trust anyone from the company. It was more than evidence. It was a cry for help from beyond the grave. The group watched the footage in silence. No one spoke, but each of them felt the same chill. The unshakable sense that you had known what was coming. They replayed his words again and again, searching for clues, analyzing the smallest details. The reflection in a window, the flicker of a light, the sound of footsteps behind him. Each discovery only deepened the mystery, revealing a pattern of manipulation far more deliberate than they had imagined. They began to trace connections between executives, investors, and hidden financial networks that all seemed to converge around one name. The deeper they dug, the more dangerous it became. Rumors spread that someone inside the circle was leaking their progress. Surveillance increased. Assistants were questioned, accounts were frozen, and contracts suddenly dissolved. But rather than retreat, the group grew more determined. They split into smaller teams, each following a different lead. One reached out to whistleblowers abroad. Another encrypted a drive of recovered evidence and sent it to international reporters. They knew the risk was immense, but they also understood that if they stopped, Yu's story would disappear forever. Every night felt heavier than the last. Some cried in frustration. Others stared at their screens in silence, piecing together fragments of truth while knowing that at any moment, everything could be erased. Yet amid the fear, there was something profoundly human. A quiet courage born from love and loyalty. They were no longer acting for fame or recognition, but for the promise they had made to their friend, that his truth would not die with him. And so, step by step, they turned grief into action, silence into resistance, and suspicion into proof. The search for truth was no longer just about Menglong. It was about reclaiming the right to remember, and the conviction that even in a world built on deception, honesty still has the power to endure. The moment of revelation did not arrive with grand speeches or breaking headlines. It began instead with a single sentence that slipped quietly into the world. Truth doesn't fade. It waits for the brave to find it. When Xiao Zhan posted those words, they were not just a tribute. They were an awakening. Within minutes, the message traveled across time zones, screens lighting up like fireflies in the dark. The post was deleted swiftly, censored before the sun had even risen, but it was already too late. The world had seen it, and what cannot be unseen cannot be silenced. In the days that followed, something remarkable happened. Fans, who had long felt powerless in the face of official silence, began to act. They shared old interviews, lyrics, and film scenes where Menglong had spoken of courage and honesty. They filled timelines with white feathers, the same feather he had worn during his last performance, transforming it into a symbol of remembrance and defiance. The white feather was gentle, weightless, yet it carried the power of millions. Soon, from Seoul to Paris, Tokyo to New York, it fluttered across social media and real-world streets alike. Buildings were illuminated with his image, murals appeared overnight, and in whispered vigils people lit candles, their reflections merging into a single glowing statement: justice still mattered. The movement was not driven by anger alone, but by love, the kind of love that refuses to forget. Menglong had once spoken about light, saying, "Even the smallest flame can outlast the darkness if it burns for the right reason." Those words became a mantra. Artists, students, and ordinary citizens joined in, archiving every deleted article, every censored clip, every trace of evidence that others tried to erase. They created what became known as the U Files, a living archive, a digital monument that no amount of censorship could bury. The harder the authorities tried to suppress it, the faster it spread, mirrored on international servers, translated into dozens of languages, preserved by people who had never even known you personally. Inside China, the pressure on the 8 stars intensified. Contracts were cancelled, their names disappeared from trending lists, and their studios faced scrutiny. Yet even stripped of their platforms, they found new ways to speak. Some hid messages in art, others in music, poetry, or interviews conducted overseas. Their defiance was quiet but unstoppable, a resistance not of protest but of persistence. It was as if Yu's voice had multiplied, finding new bodies, new languages, and new homes. By the time the world realized what had happened, the movement was no longer a tribute, it was a revolution of memory. What began as one man's story had become a collective heartbeat. It reminded people everywhere that truth does not vanish when suppressed. It transforms, passing from hand to hand, voice to voice, like a flame refusing to die out. In standing for Menglong, millions had rediscovered something greater. The belief that integrity, once awakened, cannot be silenced. The movement no longer needed permission to exist. It had already become immortal. In the end, this movement became more than a fight for one actor. It became a symbol of resistance against forgetting. Through art, music, and shared memory, fans and creators across the world are turning silence into song. Charity projects have emerged in Menglong's name. Scholarships for young filmmakers, mental health campaigns, online forums where artists can speak freely. And those 8 stars, they continue to honor him through quiet acts of defiance, funding legal aid, mentoring new performers, and reminding everyone that truth, no matter how fragile, always finds its voice. Because what they began was never about scandal. It was about humanity, the right to be remembered truthfully. Menglong's story reminds us that even when the world tries to erase someone, the light of compassion and courage can never be silenced. If this story touched you, if you believe truth still matters, please subscribe, like, and share this video. Your voice keeps his legacy alive. Thank you for watching, and remember, the truth always finds its way when we refuse to be silent.